Hello, and welcome those just joining us. A big welcome to this, of course, our webinar around how to generate ROI with all things SEO. I hope, though, that we're not preaching to the choir too much. I'll give it away, actually, what the next hour looks like. Yes, you can. It all works fantastically. That's a bit of a clue as to what our esteemed guests are going to be talking about over the next very short hour. But indeed, we're going to be talking about a number of different things, how to invest SEO, indeed how some of the mistakes that we've seen over a long period of time. But that's not really just me talking about it, of course. We're joined by a number of extremely amazing and impressive people. It's actually very rare to get them in the same place at the same time, let alone on a single webinar. Leading the charge, of course, is Tom. Tom is the founder of SureOak. It is a rapidly growing New York-based SEO agency. I think he called it SureOak for badness because, of course, it implies growth. And indeed, naturally, he'll be doing the presentation end of things. So we'll be talking to Tom and with Tom and about Tom for about 20 minutes until such times as we pass on to Marcella and Patrick and open it up to the floor as well. Marcella's been in SEO since longer than I can remember. She's almost famous, I would say, or is actually literally very much famous. And she is currently one of the most esteemed speakers at Semrush globally. Marcella lives on a plane, pretends to live in Los Angeles, but she can't actually prove it. No such time as the case, then indeed we'll believe her then. And Patrick, who you've probably seen at the likes of Brighton SEO, you probably have listened to, of course, his webinar 3030 via Conductor. Patrick gets around a fair bit too, and has just launched a new podcast, Search on Tap, which Tom was a guest on. So kind of keeping it in the family, as it were. And they really are kind of here to talk about what they know, what they've learned, problems they've solved, opportunities they've identified over their long and illustrious careers in search and indeed in marketing as well. But to kind of kick things off before we throw Tom under the proverbial presentation bus, we thought it would be really interesting just to have a little think about some of the things that have come up when we were tweeting about this, when we were talking about this over the last number of weeks, indeed, across social media. And I thought I would just open up with a couple of questions, really, to Patrick and Tom and Marcella, just to see what they thought. And really the big question for me here, and the thing that is recurring that people are asking, and I'm going to open it to all three of you, where do you think we should be allocating the SEO budget? Broad question. Tom, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. I think that it's the most important and fascinating question. So, in my experience, having authoritative links to your site, having optimized content that's well written, and user experience are the 3 or 4 most important ranking factors for just about any website in any industry. So I think those are the places you really want to be allocating your budget, because you always have some form of limited time or resources or focus you could put into your SEO. And we're going to get deeper into that, but that's how I would look at it.
Marcella, you were about to talk. At least you looked like you were about to talk.
Yeah, I was. I totally agree with that. But I do think it's very much on a case-by-case basis, because I've had some sites that I look at and they might already have a really strong link profile. So for them, maybe links aren't the thing. Maybe we want to focus more on content and outreach for the specific new content pieces. Other sites have both a lot of content and a lot of links, but the technical aspect is a mess. So that might be where most of the budget goes. So between content, links, and technical optimizations based on each site's needs. Sometimes when we have a site that's brand new and starting off, then we'll take and do basically just about a third between content, links, and technical, until we get a sense of how that site's going to progress. And then we can reassess and determine how, at that point, what do we need to do more of? Maybe they really need more links to push it over, and then we can reallocate.
To extract a bit more from you, Marcella, on that point. Particularly with the technical SEO piece, Tom, of course, they're weighted in on UX and content and a few other things being fundamental factors. If you could choose one of the things that you've just described, would technical be the go-to? Is that the thing, fix the house, and therefore everything else will be fine?
Well, frankly, I'm a little old school in that I would say links first, because you can have all the technical you want, but if you don't have enough link and domain authority, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I always say get links first and build out your domain authority. Once you have that, then technical comes into play.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah. Patrick, your thoughts? Any, you agree with Tom, Marcella? Neither?
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with everything everyone said. I think for me, where I've seen the best, the best investment at first, especially, is investing in a good content team, and a content creation process. Typically, when people get kind of make SEO more of a cultural thing and less of a tactical thing, that's when they see the most long-term ROI. And I agree, you need link authority. You need a strong technical foundation, or else you'll never really get the visibility that you want. But I think that you have to have the ability to create content on a regular basis, and you have to have people who know how to write for it, and you have to have a good keyword research process, to go out there and mine and say, hey, listen, it's not just about, hey, these 2 keywords that we want to go after. What's our content calendar look like? What are we going to be writing about in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 10 months from now? And I think people who kind of look into the future, because knowing it's going to be a long-term investment, typically do the best.
And it's interesting, Patrick, to say that. I mean, I think probably I agree with you that it is a long-term investment. It's certainly a longer play, and indeed makes a great deal of sense. I think though in the broader marketing space, we're in a position where people love quick wins, cheat sheets, hack this, hack that. Do you think that SEO is different? Do you think that SEO is better? What do you say to those sorts of people who think that there's just a cheat to everything?
Yeah, I mean, typically when that comes up, and it does often, here at Conductor, we touch base with hundreds of people, on a monthly basis, and a lot of them, it's all about like, hey, I want that quick win. I need to show the ROI in 3 months, and then, or else I can't I can't get into this. And I think from there, I always like to say, if you're going to make the investment, just set expectations properly, and always go say, hey, listen, if we're going to do this, you want to do it right. You can go out and get quick wins. It's not that you can't go out, find a page that's underperforming and then optimize it, and inject keywords, build some links to it, and then get those quick wins. But I think that every time you get into those types of conversations, you need to also set expectations with your stakeholders that, we can get these quick wins now, but SEO is a slow burn, and it's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts small, but as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes one of the most powerful weapons in your digital arsenal. And I think when people's minds are changed, that's when you really start to see the ball moving for these companies and people who have that kind of short-term view.
Well, and the problem too is when you're going after a quick win, because Google's so oriented on patterns, if there is no event to trigger a big spike in traffic, that's going to cause a red alert, which can often result in a penalty. So I'm always very cautious and wary. If someone says, I need a quick win, I'm like, I can do it, but are you ready to pay the potential results, which is either a penalty down the line, or you get a manual review with a manual penalty. So you have to be able to, whatever you do, if you're going to go after a quick win, what's the trigger? What was the event? Was it a press release? Was it a big campaign, a big launch? You need to make sure it's done right to support that.
Building the right kind of arsenal, Marcella, or building the right kind of snowball. Good snowballs from Conductor, of course.
The arsenal was melted.
Tom, I want to kick off with your presentation because we're talking about SEO being the biggest and best weapon in the arsenal. And I know you have a talk in store lined up, about 15, 20 slides about why it is indeed the greatest weapon in the arsenal. So I'm going to hand off to you, and we're going to kind of work in the background and, of course, ask you lots of really interesting questions when you finish with your presentation. But it's a really good presentation, everybody. Over to Tom. Enjoy.
Fantastic. And you can see my screen okay, right, Aiden? Okay. We can see my screen okay?
Perfect, Tom. Perfect.
Great. Thanks. Okay, great. So how to invest in your SEO for the highest ROI? That's really the question we're solving for and focusing on right now. So let's start off by looking at what every business owner, CEO, what we really want for our business. And it typically looks a little something like this, a very familiar chart up and to the right. We want consistent business growth. We want, to be making more money for the business this month or this quarter, this year than we did in the previous period of time. And we just want growth, right? That's what we want as a business. Pretty straightforward. SEO is a beautiful way to have inbound traffic and inbound sales of people coming to you. I think that's a lot of the allure of it. It's steady. It could be very consistent, a flow of new business or potential prospects coming to your site every single day, every single month. And again, that's just one of the hugest benefits of SEO in terms of being a channel for attracting new customers and people doing business with you. When you compare that to outbound sales, there's a lot of unqualified people. You might be, if you're in a business and you're doing cold calling or cold emailing, the conversion rates are low. It's very painful. Sometimes you're disrupting or bothering someone, and the intent isn't really there. You don't know if the person you're cold calling or cold emailing, if they're even interested or they're even thinking about making a purchase or doing business with you. So obviously with the search, everyone knows if someone has that intent and they're looking for that product or service, or they're just interested in whatever topic or focus your business is in, it's really nice to have them coming inbound to you versus you chasing after them, like when you're dating and you're texting and calling and you're getting nothing back. It's not a good place to be. So one of the most important concepts we can't not talk about is monthly recurring traffic. So monthly recurring traffic is basically qualified and targeted prospects coming to your business's website every single day, every single week, month, and year. And this is just so crucial. And here's just a snapshot of what it looks like. Now, obviously, it's great if your traffic is growing over time, but even if it's just stable and consistent, and every single day, every single month, you're getting the same amount of visitors coming, it actually drives your other most important business metrics. So the benefits of monthly recurring traffic is that it's stable, it's consistent, it's predictable, and it's easier to scale. So if your web traffic is already converting into paying customers or clients for your business today, then monthly recurring traffic is going to drive your other most important business metrics. And so we're assuming that your business, your website has some kind of conversion rate. Hopefully you're able to track those conversions. Hopefully maybe you've done some conversion rate optimization so that if 1,000 visitors come, you can be converting them pretty efficiently. So as I mentioned, monthly recurring traffic will drive your monthly recurring revenue or your monthly recurring revenue growth. So when it comes to if you have a business that has a SaaS model or a subscription service, it'll actually drive the growth of your monthly recurring revenue, because once you acquire a new customer or client and they stay with you month after month, now you're driving the growth of your subscriber base or of your customers. And if you have like an e-commerce website, you have that even if it's like a one-time sale, you have that traffic coming to you every month, it's just going to drive those sales. So it's a pretty simple equation there. So your monthly recurring traffic directly impacts and drives your consistent business growth. And so these are the two main areas I was just talking about already. Okay, so it's pretty fascinating that the first chart on the left, which is your consistent traffic coming to the site, actually drives the more up and to the right chart of your business earnings or business growth or revenue growth or whatever you're looking at. So that's key. So now we get into, okay, great. Now we got to figure out this whole SEO bit, right? And it's challenging. We just talked about budget allocation. How do we go about doing that? And there's one fatal assumption that many make, which is, I'll just optimize my website for SEO and therefore I'll get more traffic and therefore I'll grow my business. And the reason I say this is a little bit of an assumption or a fallacy, or there's an issue here, is as these guys know, Aiden and Pat and Marcella, it's so easy for someone who doesn't know much about SEO to think, I want to rank, I want to rank #1 for this keyword. And then, sometimes we hear that and just kind of have to laugh a little bit. So it is really complex. There's a whole handful of problems we have to look at and address. So on the one hand, Google's algorithm is basically a black box. Like, we can't see into it. We don't know exactly how it's working. We have ideas. We get, statements from search engines or from, research and data that's provided, but it's not clear to us. Number two, there's over 200 ranking factors. So which one should you focus on? And this is where budget allocation is so important. We'll talk about in a little bit. Number three, what's working today or has been working for any SEO or for any business over the last months or years, any tactics may not be working so well going forward. So what you're doing can change of what'll work. The next thing is that measuring ROI becomes really challenging. I'll probably be turning it over to Marcella a little bit on this because there are a lot of challenges that come along with that. After that, experiments have a very long life cycle. So, if we're going to make an implementation today, we might have to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months to see if that's actually being a driver of increasing our organic traffic or increasing our KPIs. And then finally, the variables in experiments are really difficult to isolate. So if you're a scientist doing a test, you might do one test with one variable at a time. Well, when we're doing SEO often in practice, it's we might be pulling several different levers at the same time. In 1 month, we might be having 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different initiatives. When we look over the next month or the month after, it's a little bit difficult for us to say, oh, it was this one that really drove the results, not the other one. So we have basically the way to solve for a lot of these problems is just with the right mindset and the right way of thinking. So first off, we have to begin with the end in mind. And this is very basic, but it has to be said. We have to get clear on our goals, setting our KPIs, and reverse engineering how to get there from here. So that's just number one, because oftentimes people will say, oh, I want more traffic, or I want to rank for this keyword. But those really aren't necessarily the best ways to get you to your increase in earnings, your increase in revenue, whatever ultimate goals you're trying to reach. Oftentimes there might be less competitive keywords, or there might be traffic that keywords that have high volume but just don't really have the intent and aren't converting so well. I'll show you a slide of that in a little bit. Secondly, we have to think long term. I think Pat already mentioned this, and it's true. And oh, there's Warren Buffett's beautiful face. Don't you love him? Because that's the best way to get the highest ROI out of SEO. It is a longer term way of marketing. So SEO is an investment-based marketing channel. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. You can't get, as Marcelo just mentioned, you can't get like some cheat sheet, like quick win hack thing in like 1 week. It's not going to work that way. It's going to take time. And when you align with that, you're going to have a way better ROI and results. So same thing, the highest ROI of SEO is long-term. And when you compare this to other marketing channels, whether it's Facebook ads or Google AdWords, and those are great marketing channels for your business, it's just that it's quicker to see the results with those channels. With SEO, we're talking about over the course of months, over the course of years. And I'm not saying that you throw up some Facebook ads today and you'll get like tons of sales today, but there is more of, you can get that instant traffic right now, and then you can test and play with different funnels and what's working there. Thirdly, you want to think like an investor. And one of the most interesting things here is you actually want to think more like a fund manager. You want to think about budget allocation. You want to see what are the biggest levers that will move the needle for you. So we'll be getting more into that. But if there's 200 ranking factors, we're not going to do all 200. If even the top 20 or the top 50, by the time you get to the 18th or the 19th or the 20th most important ranking factor, is it really going to drive as much impact as going back to the first, second, and third and refocusing your resources back there? And now when we talk about focusing on what moves the needle, there's several challenges here, because search engines and thought leaders sometimes give us information that might be general, it might be broadly true, but it might not be uniquely true to your website or your business's situation. They might say things about the on-site content, but like Marcelo said, if you have no backlinks to your site that are authoritative, it's not going to be, there's going to be something missing there that won't allow you to get the most out of your SEO investment. The other thing is what I would consider to be misinformation, which, sometimes, again, for search engines, they're trying to protect themselves from all the decades of spam and manipulation of, all these black hat tactics. So they don't necessarily want to be as open. So there's a lot of challenges to know what actually moves the needle. And, frankly, it's more of an unknown to anyone who's a beginner or intermediate in SEO because they just haven't had the practitioner experience to find out. Fourth, we need to align with Google's ultimate goals. So Google, what they're ultimately trying to do is to serve their users and to give them what they want, what they're searching for, give them a great experience. And so the better job we can do of serving the best search result to that person searching on Google or whatever search engine it is, Bing, the higher our chances of actually acquiring the organic traffic we're looking for our business and for our growth. So it's very much, give to get, pay it forward to help Google's users find what they're looking for. And the benefit of this is it helps to future-proof your business's website to algorithm updates, because Google's algorithm is optimizing to help their users. And right now it's an imperfect model of reality, but it's always getting closer and closer. So the updates to come over the coming months and years will consistently keep moving towards helping users get what they're looking for. So, getting monthly recurring traffic will allow you to get the highest possible ROI. And so I want to give you an example here. And there's two assumptions in this example I'm about to show you. The first is that this business is a good fit for SEO, which, believe it or not, isn't always the case. And the second is that the business's SEO budget has been properly allocated. And I feel like this might just be a recurring theme because, without the proper budget allocation, you're just basically, putting your money or resources in the wrong thing. So in this example, let's say we have $10,000 we're going to invest into SEO. So we make this one-time initial upfront investment into SEO. Let's say month one, we get no ROI out of it because SEO takes time. Month two, we get no ROI out of it. By month three, month four, maybe we get, $2,000 a month coming out of that $10,000 investment. At the end of that 4-month period, which, for us nowadays feels like a very long time, 4 months, our ROI is negative $6,000. All I have to show for it is a loss. But as you look at that over time, by the time you get to month 6, you're now positive ROI. By the time you get to month 8, your ROI is actually, in this example, 100%. So the other interesting thing, if you look in the rightmost column here, is that the ROI number can significantly shift and drastically improve over the course of months, or even if you think out over years. So to have this visually demonstrated to you, if you look at over the course of month 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the ROI keeps increasing every month, because if you're still getting that monthly recurring traffic that's converting into new customers, new sales for you, then you're still getting that ROI on that initial upfront investment you made initially. So, and you can look at that on an absolute dollar basis on the right-hand side. And now if you look at this over years, it actually seems quite ridiculous, which I'm always afraid to share this because it just seems so absurd. And basically all we're doing is creating a model and running some numbers. You can adjust these numbers, but I mean, you look out over, the course of 2 years, 3 years down the road, the ROI gets pretty, exponential, almost ridiculous, like hundreds of % ROI or potentially over 1,000% ROI. And so when you compare that back to what investors think of as a good return on their investment, it's 10% is like a good return, right? You can look at the stock market, you can look at bonds, you can look at venture capitalists, maybe, or hedge funds. 15%, 20% is like extraordinary, right? With SEO, the ROI can be pretty ridiculously high. But again, I want to caution this with, this is an exercise to shift your mindset to help demonstrate the potential long-term value of SEO for your business. I would not consider these typical results, and you can revise these numbers downward significantly to get more conservative numbers. But again, it comes down to budget allocation. And so I just want to re-highlight that here because again, it's what you do with that $10,000 and how far you can make it go. So when it comes to budget allocation, I'm curious to hear more on this from everyone here. But, in my estimation, in my experience, authoritative backlinks are the most heavily weighted ranking factor in Google's algorithm, as is, doing proper keyword research, clustering keywords, and creating optimized content. Having that content be long form, very helpful. Along with that comes user experience. So that comes in several different ways. And then there's technical aspects as well, whether it's page load speed and it really depends. It's situational, right? If your site has 100 pages, the technical might not be a huge part of it. But if your site has hundreds of thousands of pages, yeah, it better be very technically sound. So again, every situation is different. So where you want to invest budget will really change. And there are a lot of real risks in terms of investing into SEO and looking for those outcomes, because number one, those outcomes are unknown. Rand Fishkin said it quite well, which is, yes, it's a risk, but it's also the opportunity because other people are not willing to take that risk. Also, you can fall into several traps. One might be doing the wrong things right, or another could be doing the right things wrong. Like neither of those will get you to where you want to be. And frankly, just not knowing what you're doing, which again, there is so much complexity with Google's algorithm and ranking factors and all these components. It really takes time and experience to get it done right. When it comes down to measuring ROI, okay, we put in this money to our SEO. What are we getting out of it? This is one of the most challenging places to look at. I wanted to share this screenshot with you. This is from Google Analytics for a website called Life Coach Spotter, which is a lead generation website. And over this time period, you can see, one page this is for organic traffic. And I think that keyword is like, feeling lost in life. How do I find myself when I'm feeling lost in my life? Even though it has so much search volume and so much traffic coming to this page, the conversion rate for leads is so much lower than when you look down at this other page that, someone is searching to how to find a life coach, or I want to find a life coach. And the conversion rate of that is like many times more. What is that? Like 20 times maybe higher than the other page. So you could look across the other columns at how many leads are submitted or the valuation of those leads. So it just goes to show you that, you can be focusing on the wrong keywords, or you say, oh, this is a lot of volume, but it might not convert as well. There's a lot of factors going into thinking about these things and measuring the ROI. Also, the conversion path is not linear. So conversions generally get attributed to the last touch in the path. So someone might see your ad on Facebook. They might have heard of you at a conference. They might have, seen or heard of your business or website in multiple different places. But, if someone first found you in organic traffic and then later on they saw a Facebook retargeting ad and clicked on that ad and then came and converted and became a customer, you'd say, oh, these guys found me on Facebook. But actually, they might have first found you through SEO and through organic traffic. So there's multi-channel attribution models. And so conversions are generally attributed to the last touch in the path. But again, it's just something to be aware of, because the customer journey is, someone will hear about you, and then, a second time they'll come again to the site, and a third time. So, very important is you want to be able to track conversions to the extent that they can be tracked. Oftentimes, I start working with someone or talking to someone, and we realize they're not even tracking, goals or conversions in Google Analytics. So we can't even see how many leads are they generating today. Understanding the customer journey and knowing that, it's not just like someone comes to your site once and buys. That can and of course does happen, but it's typically not the path. So looking at how to attribute the conversion to different channels, looking all the way through the sales funnel is important for measuring your ROI. So you may get 10 leads for a keyword or a page, but the quality of those leads might be really low, or the intent just might not be there. So you say, oh, wow, we're getting these great leads, but if they're not converting into sales, there might be another page or keyword that only gets a couple leads, but they're the best leads ever, and they all convert into sales. So we want to think all the way through the sales funnel. As mentioned, experiments kind of a very long life cycle, and there could be, for running, 3 or 4 or 5 different initiatives for a website in 1 month, it's a little hard to isolate. Okay, it was this initiative that really moved the needle the most, and not these other ones. So there are certainly a lot of challenges in measuring ROI on SEO. So just some closing thoughts for you. Number one, focus on the long term for maximum ROI. I don't think we can emphasize this enough. I mean, it's just the nature of SEO. You can't really be thinking short term. Number two, focus on budget allocation. That's almost everything, right? If you had this precious investment or nest egg for your SEO, you have to think about, okay, where's the best places and where are the best initiatives to put it into. And finally, trusting practitioner experiments and data, I find to be way more valuable than just best practices, because sometimes you'll hear best practices from a search engine or from whomever, and of course you do always want to follow best practices, but to actually drive results and move the needle, you have to go based on data and studies, as well as your own personal experience to say, I've done that in the past and it doesn't work. I've optimized all my image alt tags and nothing happened. And so you don't want to waste your time doing those things. So getting that real experience is super helpful. And at this point, we want to open up the discussion. So I'll turn it back over to you, Aidan, and we can have a conversation with Pat and Marcella as well about the ROI of SEO.
Thank you so much, Tom. There was absolutely mountains of stuff in there. Really useful, really awesome stuff. I have a whole list of questions that I've written down, but I'm very wary of just shouting questions at you, because that's kind of me. And I know Marcella, and knowing Patrick, I know probably they also kind of have the same things going on, some comments to add, all that sort of stuff. It was great. It was the mountain to Patrick's snowball, as it were. But we're in a position really, and I think probably I'll kick you off with a question, as it were, because I'm really interested in your monthly recurring traffic versus your monthly recurring revenue. And I know you talked a little bit about conversion there in the measurement section there at the end. I suppose my question for you is, does recurring traffic automatically create recurring revenue, or is there something in between that makes the mechanism sweet, as it were?
I love that. Yeah. And one of the components of that is the conversion rate, is, conversion rate optimization. And so, if your website can already convert, and it can already, get sales or get leads or whatever the goal of that, your website for your business is, then yes, presumably, if you increase the traffic, you should be increasing those sales or those leads, whatever you're trying to drive. But again, there's also like the qualification or the type of traffic you're getting. You know, for SEO, it's like what are the keywords they're using, right? So you see some keywords hardly convert at like a 0.3% conversion, and some will be like 7%. So user intent is an important component of that. So generally speaking, I would say yes. But again, there's a lot of nuances within that, and then you have to measure and see, is it not converting, or are we increasing traffic so much but revenue isn't increasing as fast? Why?
Marcella, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to add to that it also, we really need to look at the customer journey and the stages of the funnel, because there might be keywords that are very awareness driven. So maybe that first in that chart that you had, the one that doesn't drive a lot of conversions, maybe that's a branding awareness keyword, which leads to one touch point. And then if you take that and you remarket to those people, maybe they'll convert further down the line. That's where that attribution and the tracking becomes really important, because there are sites that will have a lot of traffic, but a lot of that is top of the funnel traffic, and it's not meant to convert. It's just meant to be a branding and an awareness element. And then later there's other ways that you bring them further down the funnel with less traffic, but more intent to convert.
Patrick, you're nodding there. Do you agree on Marcella's commercial intent funnel approach?
100%. I was going to say, it's very important to kind of bucket your keywords like that, because a lot of people, when they start to see traffic increase and revenue doesn't necessarily follow at the same pace, they tend to get discouraged, and that's not really the way to look at it, because a lot of that can be top of the funnel. So it's very important that you know which keywords you have and what part of the stage they fall into, and I think that way, that's a great way to know, like, hey, if you're using, like, let's say a first touch attribution, you can know, like, okay, this group of keywords, got us that first touch, and then we could probably track those. If they're sending recurring traffic, we can say that those brought people back probably later in the stage. At least they got our brand out there, and then those transactional terms to Marcel's point, you can then use retargeting on transactional terms to bring those folks back. So what's driving traffic to you, but you also want to make sure you understand what type of traffic that is.
Yeah. We've actually had a few questions come in while we were discussing, whatever it is that we want to discuss, all the power. Erin has asked a question on the live stream, and she's asking a question really asking you to all comment on can you see which tactic specifically is improving ranking the most? And Tom obviously gave us a breakdown of the top 6 things to do, but can you see it in a more specific way than that, even if you look back at stuff you did a few months ago? And thank you, Erin, for the question. What do you think, Marcel?
Well, I think it's really difficult to identify precisely, why one page is performing. There's a few tools, though, that you can use. The first thing is to check, obviously, the backlinks of that particular page and see, maybe there was a phenomenal link that came in and that really boosted that page's authority. Second, I always go dig into Search Console. And now that we have the new Google Search Console, you have 16 months of data, and they've done a really good job of allowing you to filter and get a lot more information. So you then grab Google Search Console, you filter by that page, you see what keywords are driving the traffic to that page, and then you see, oh wow, look, maybe I got picked up, this one got picked up for this, and then that might be another source of it. So generally, like, what actually worked specifically for a particular page is hard, and the best you can do is just go figure out what's working, what pages are performing well, and then reverse engineer back and do some competitive analysis into the page.
Thank you very much, Marcella. Patrick, Tom, do you have anything that you would add on that?
Yeah, from my perspective, totally agree with Marcel that, for a particular page, it's on a case-to-case basis. There's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of levers that you can pull. It's knowing which levers to pull for your site. That's a very important thing that people, should understand. But for me, what I've seen over the course of the last, I don't know, let's call it like 6-7 months, right, that I've seen a lot of people do, is kind of trying to build a link acquisition into their content creation practice, right? So that's, partnering with folks within their vertical, doing combined case studies, doing guest blogging, things of that nature, not in a shady way, just talking about the same thing and sharing links with one another. And I've seen people put programs like that together over the course of, like I said, the last several months, and they've had a lot of success with that, because it not only you don't have to go out and harvest links, which everyone knows is really tough, very time consuming. It actually kind of builds it in. And that's something that I've seen a lot of people get creative with. A lot of very smart SEO strategists that I get the opportunity to work with doing things like that. And so that's something that I've been suggesting with people that has a pretty good, pretty good return rate.
Cool. On the return rate, we've actually had a couple of questions in around that as well. It was quite an interesting question because we're talking a bit about budget, and obviously we're talking about ROI, and we're talking about which levers to pull kind of quite broadly, and quite specifically actually in a couple of instances. We've got a question in here suggesting that we talk very broadly about budget, but do we have any examples that we maybe encountered in the past with clients, naming no names, that investments we actually made that worked out really well to kind of build on what Tom put into his very awesome talk. Tom, do you have anything off the top of your head that you think, yeah, that was a really good move for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. If we just focus for a second on just like authoritative backlinks, let's talk about backlinks and content that's optimized for 1 second. There's been two situations. So one is like where, a client, the site, the content was really well built out, really well optimized. They actually created 250,000 words of content optimized, like helpful guides, 4,000 word guides. I know, I was very impressed by that. And we did basically an authoritative link building campaign, and that it was a little scary how fast, their organic traffic and ranking was going up. It's so scary. I'm afraid to share it because I don't want people to expect it to be like a vertical thing, right? And then another example is just a site that has a lot of authoritative links, but just like no content, no keyword research, no optimization, right? You get some great content on there that's optimized, and the site already has the authoritative links coming to it. And then, I think those are two of the strongest components of what moves the needle for SEO. So hopefully those examples help.
I think to wrap another question around it a little bit, and again, Marcel, maybe you can add to this one so we're not putting too much pressure on Tom. A question came in from Dan asking around, does this all apply to a brand new site, brand new domain, don't have the backlink profile that Tom just mentioned? What should I do? Is there still an ROI there, or do I have to wait?
Yeah, so that's really the first thing we do with a brand new domain is we want to make sure whatever keywords we're targeting are feasible. So we always do like a barrier to entry analysis first, and there has to be this very distinct plan, because if someone comes to me and say, I have a brand new domain and I want to rank for the word jewelry with $5,000, not going to happen, right? So the first thing is, do we have enough budget for this keyword? And if we don't, what's a long tail keyword that we can go after? So once you have a good idea for the right keywords where you can compete, then normally what we'll do is we'll start with, like I said earlier, about a third. A third goes into content, a third goes into outreach and link building, and a third goes into technical optimizations, making sure the site speed is as optimized as it can be, all of the technical elements in place. Fortunately, after a while with the technical stuff, with smaller sites, unless it's a massive 200,000 product e-commerce site, that finishes, and then it's just a matter of maintenance. So then we can take more of that technical budget and put it more into outreach. We used to do a different model where we used to have more content. We would be producing a lot of content. We've recently shifted down and we're producing less content with more amplification. So more outreach, and we're just doing a few very key, what we call campaigns. So few really, really in-depth content pieces that are really creative, that have visuals, that have infographics, maybe even videos attached to them. And then we do a ton of outreach for those. So really focusing on the links. And then we take those pages and we make sure they're super long, super well optimized for a whole subset of keywords. And then we push those with the link building and user engagement signals.
Cool. Patrick, maybe you can add to this in the context of another question that's coming in. Obviously, YouTube is lighting up at this particular point. I think, guys, you have fans. But a question's coming from Chad, really around, we're talking about authoritative backlinks being kind of the #1 ranking factor, so to speak. We can kind of be kicking that one back and forth between us. What strategies should we be using to get them? Indeed, is it great content, or as Marcella said, are we downgrading the content and focusing on some other elements a little bit, using less content, as it were? So how do we make ourselves persuasive in the backlink stakes? How do we get those elusive backlinks? Patrick, maybe you've got an opinion on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and it's kind of the question that that a lot of SEO strategists get is where is the best way to go out and do the outreach. As I mentioned before, I think leveraging your partner network if you have one, going out and saying, hey, like we're in the same vertical. Do you want to do a piece of content with one another? Do you want to do a guest blog? Do you want to do some marketing research? We do Conductor. We do a lot of marketing research with a lot of our customers, and that's a great way for to build legitimate backlinks. In a fair way, and fairly quickly. Leveraging PR is always another way that you can do it. Because you can use the assets that you've created. As you can see, I have a lot of building. You're kind of building all these things on top of one another so that it kind of all rolls together. So you could leverage those assets with your PR, with your social media, and get them out there and kind of start generating buzz about them so people link back to it. I agree with with pretty much everything that Marcel says too. Making sure that that content is engaging. Because if you want someone to link to you, someone legitimate to link to you, you have to earn that link. You have to earn them saying that this is a good piece of content from you. So I think going out and leveraging those types of partnership networks and leveraging assets that you already have, making them better, making them special, and that's the best way to kind of go out there and get that without getting into trouble.
To follow up on that, Patrick, kind of building on what Marcel has also said there too, what Tom kicked us off with. Do we need budget then for all this content? And of course, it's not necessarily about content volume, but content quality. We're talking about what we got work a lot harder. Do we need a lot of money for that, or can we do that on the cheap? Is it just patience and time and outthink them outwork them, as I always like to say?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it on the cheap. You really can. A lot of people think that you need, $250,000 to run a legitimate SEO campaign, and that's not true. There are a lot of great freelance copywriters out there. There's a lot of great freelance, folks out there who can help you out for a fair price. The one thing that you always want to start with, and Marcel, mentioned this before, was really just before you go out and do that is knowing what your universe is, what your keyword universe is, and what you want to target. Because the way that you can save yourself money is, if you're hiring a freelance copywriter, let's say, don't make them go out and do the keyword research for you and pick the topics for you. You can do that yourself. You have to take some kind of ownership there and tell them what to do. So that's a way that you can save a lot of money and get a lot of quality content out there.
And I think adding to that, people, and this is this wall that I hit almost every time. The client, they're a site about selling boats. So then they think the content has to be about boats. And here's my infographic about how to build a boat, whatever. And they're very literal, right? And then they're thinking, well, why am I not getting links for my content about boats? Well, okay, what if you did, people have to really, to earn links, you have to do two things. You have to produce content that's interesting and different. So I don't know, driverless boat, I don't know, something completely different, blockchain-based boat, crypto buying boat, whatever, something totally that everyone's interested, talking about, random, and build content that people are going to be like, oh, whoa, that's interesting. That's the first key. If you don't have that, then you're just it's not going to work. The second thing is the outreach component. It's not easy to do, but it's essential. So whatever campaign you launch, you have to be able to start whether a lot of people may have a group of a partnership, it's people they work with. A lot of people won't. So you have to be able to and willing to do outreach, blogger outreach to people you've never met before. So there is a tool that I heard about recently. It's called Outreach Plus, and it helps to scale your outreach. You put I think you import your list and it has templates and all that. It's from Ian Cleary, who's well known in the SEO and social media space. So you might check that out. But the key to doing this is you have to, I think he was citing numbers like for every campaign, he'll send over 1,000 emails. And then he'll have like something like a 20% response rate. So the numbers have to be pretty staggering to see the results. But it's the only way, it's essential.
And actually, if you wanted to explore what Marcella just said, you could ask Ian about it on the 7th of June because we're doing a webinar around how to build a website domain authority in 90 days.
There we go.
Worthwhile banking that one from Marcella. Thanks so much. I think they're probably an interesting question, and kind of to refer back to the audience now, pull one from them. Really, they're asking kind of about the scale of content. Do I need to create a whole lot of it? someone told me I have to create a lot of blogs. Is that the way forward? Should I write about blockchains or both? Is the big question. Not specifically, of course, but they're worried that they're a one-man band. How do they make it work for them if they don't have the budget necessarily for big content investment?
Yeah, if you're doing this on your own, there's a lot of ways to scale up content creation, even if you don't have a budget or you don't have someone to write for you, right? And like Pat said, content writers, there's a lot of people who are passionate about writing, so they'll do it for not a hefty budget. But if you're going to do it yourself, I've even heard a story which I'm totally on board with, which is like someone just recording themselves talking about whatever that topic is, and just kind of getting the thoughts and the ideas into recording, and then you might even have someone like a virtual assistant overseas for a very small amount of money, help to transcribe that for you and get that into written content. Or maybe you go back and do it. Or, you could set yourself a schedule of, I'm going to write 500 words a day, or, 200 words a day, 1,000 words a day. I think some other key points around content creation. One is I always look for evergreen versus, fresh content is a ranking factor. I better create one blog post a week or whatever. I haven't seen that be impactful. You know what I mean? I think if you have the freshest piece of content, it's, in terms of that as a ranking factor, it's down the line. But if you have an evergreen piece of content that over time has gotten links and has, 2,000 words, 3,000 words, 4,000 words is sincerely helpful to help people find what they're looking for, the user engagement metrics will be better there. So again, it's thinking about the time you have or the budget you have or the amount of words of content to create you have. We have a project that's like a 60,000 word project, and we just divide it up. This is a really important keyword and page you want to do. So that one's getting 4,000 words, but that one not so much 1,000 words. So you kind of continuously think about budget allocation in many different ways.
True. Another question actually also from the audience. Hello, audience. They're asking, all right, if we don't have the budget or we have a small budget, then is the potential of SEO based on your talk, Tom? Obviously, we're terrified of that 1,700% increase in monthly revenue side. Someone spotted that and went, life changed. They're asking the question, though, of course, then is my possible profitability, my possible future wealth, is it unlimited on the basis of using SEO? Or do I need to think more constructively in a more integrated way?
So I would argue that it is, but I'm always afraid to say things that are outlandish and ridiculous because there's plenty of that on the internet. No one needs crazy claims to say, yeah, you could make $1 billion tomorrow. So I put that in the presentation to show where the logic you can come out on. And of course I made up those numbers, right? But I've seen this happen. I've literally seen this happen. And so again, it's kind of hard to answer because I don't want to mislead anyone. And there's a lot of assumptions in there. Like you're doing SEO right. You know what you're doing the keyword research properly. You're getting authoritative backlinks, which Marcella and Pat talked about. And that's usually one of the most challenging things. You have to have link-worthy content or assets on the site. It could be a free tool. It could be a resource, anything. You have to have that. And you have to have off-site work, doing PR, building relationships like Pat mentioned. All of these things are so important and they take time and they take effort. So I'll just try to put aside any outlandish claims because I don't want people to get the wrong impression, especially when it comes to making money on the internet.
Well, I mean, we have faith in you, Tom. So we believe that it is unlimited for you. But, let's be fair, you're not a beginner, ultimately, one way or another. But potentially, I think, is what Tom is trying to say, but without saying anything outlandish and weird. On that thought, there was actually a really interesting question for Patrick, sort of similar theme, but about bigger businesses. So not about, grow my website, start things off. And one of our viewers has asked Patrick whether or not is there a kind of a business case I need to make or culture change in order to empower people to believe in SEO a little bit more, or is it just really you just have to wait for it, leave me alone, let me do my job? Is there something we can do to bring people along?
Yeah, no, and that's a big challenge for enterprise, businesses, for large businesses who typically have policies that, are a pretty glacial process to change. What I've seen work is, again, going back to what I said at the beginning of the webinar, you have to go in and educate people on it first and not just ask, hey, I want to do this series of things you've never heard about, and we might get ROI, out of it. That's not a great sales pitch. So what I always say to do is, and stuff that I do all the time is I go into companies companies, and I help strategists who are struggling with this, trying to get buy-in from higher ups or just anyone in the company. And you go in and you educate them on what SEO is. You educate them on what the benefit is. What's the benefit to the business? You do some projections. You do things of that nature to try and to educate them. And then you start to build in some governance around it, because 9 out of 10 companies, especially large companies, they're going to have no governance in place. SEO is going to be some person sitting in a corner in a dark, broken down desk somewhere, and everyone's going to be like, what does that person do? But as as people start to realize how, number one, that it's not that difficult of a black box to open, that it's possible for anyone to do it, and it really is mostly research and just a common sense approach, that starts to shift things culturally within a large organization. Then you can start to get teams built around it. Maybe you can hire a couple of people that will help you evangelize it within your company. And then as it becomes more of a cultural thing and more of a day-to-day thing built into people's processes, then then the tactical part of SEO starts to become a day-to-day thing, and it's not that big of a deal for people. And then you just start to see this big, ball rolling down the hill.
I mean, it's a bigger project, certainly, Patrick, as you say. And I think really an interesting sort of point, and this is something that I've come across myself a fair bit, is this idea, well, if you're doing it, then you've got to report on it. And if you've got to report on it, then you've got to measure it. Mm-hmm. And the different pieces often very, very tricky, particularly if you were a very specific channel marketer. You're not necessarily great at some of the tools, so using analytics, using attribution models, as Tom included in his talk, nor actually processing and communicating that data in things like Data Studio. And I'm wondering kind of really what all three of you really here think. What is the best way to report on it? And we know Marcel is a master of the reporting suite in Semrush. Take a bow.
Yeah, sure am.
So how does that look for us? Marcel, if you want to kick us off, maybe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the key when we start, it's always working with understanding what are the right KPIs to measure with each company. So one of the early meetings that we have with any new client that we've worked with in the past, it's what matters to you. Sometimes we work directly with the CMO, sometimes we're many levels down. So we always figure out what's going to be the best way to get buying and to maintain that buying. And then we'll figure out what those KPIs are. It used to be, a decade ago that it was just, we just need traffic. And that was it. And that was the KPI. Now they want to know exactly how many conversions that they get specifically from organic visitors compared to it's getting more and more sophisticated with time. So what we then do is once we understand what that is, there's using the Semrush reporting suite, we always start there and we'll build a report. It's a little tricky in the beginning to do it, but after you kind of dive in, I can now produce a report in minutes in Semrush, mainly because I have templates built out for everything. But I actually also complement it with some other tools. We use Semrush for more of the SEO specific KPI reporting. So in there, we'll have not just traffic, but we'll figure out here's a set amount of keywords that we're tracking. Here's the number of keywords that we won or lost in a certain period of time. We'll also have the specific keywords we're tracking and the ranking and the ranking change over time. So we'll all put all of that in that report. We also use Google Data Studio and another tool called Megalithic, which will also grab data from various sources. So if we're running AdWords, we put that in there as well. Facebook ads, Search Console data. And then we can also see a more like 500-degree view and say, look, here's what's happening in Search Console. Here's how we're doing with all the different channels compare. You can, my God, it just endless the amount of data you can pull in now with all these APIs. A decade ago, this was mostly manual. 2 decades ago, I had somebody sitting there having to do. Now it's really easy. Once you understand the tools and how to build them and how to match the data together, you set it. And I now, like every Monday, I get these reports that pop into my inbox. All I have to do is like, okay, this one's doing well. Oh, this one needs more attention. We dropped on this keyword. Oh, this one, had a 200% increase in traffic. I better go and call the client to send us a bottle of wine or something. So it's just knowing how to do it, and it's worth spending the time. It's once you have those templates built on any of these tools, they're easy to adapt.
Cool. So you think, Marcel, in some ways, once we're in the swing of it, once we understand what we're doing to some extent, practice makes perfect, then we overcome analysis paralysis, and it just comes into the inbox like a stream of...
It really does. It shows up. So my Monday mornings at 8 o'clock, they come from all sources because I programmed them all to come in 8 a.m. on Monday. So I know every Monday I'm going to spend an hour or so looking at reports, and it's so I don't have to remember to go get it or anything. And then I'm ready for the rest of the week. Any meetings I have, anything, I have the data. I've seen it all. I've already looked at it, and I know what to be aware of.
So a bit dangerous. Tom, what do you get up to? How do you structure your reporting and measurements?
Yeah, I think Marcella has a lot more, sophistication around measuring and reporting. But for me, the very bare bones basics is like you go into Google Analytics, you set up goals, you make sure that they're tracking conversions, whatever those are. With e-commerce, you can integrate it with Google Analytics. If it's leads, you set those up. Make sure they're working right, because if if it's not working right, then, or even if it's like an event, like someone's clicking on a certain button, but that's like the bare bones. Like you have to get that, and like Marcella said, you have to have the KPIs and the goals set, because you can get more traffic that just might not help you reach your goal of getting more revenue or earnings or leads or whatever you're trying to get. So you got to at least have it set up to be tracked. And I think that's very basic. So from there, then you can say, okay, like here's the number of leads. And then you could look more closely, we're converting this many leads, or this one turned into a deal, or this was a bigger sale. So that's my kind of bare bones basics on it.
Patrick, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think reporting is an iterative process, right? And I think at least at the beginning, what you have to do is report on what's going to make the biggest impact for you, right? And I think a lot of people just take, data from all different places. And if you know how to use all that and you can do that, that's awesome. But most people don't. And I think that to everyone else's point here, you have to have those KPIs set in place. And and I think that once you get that, hey, okay, I have to make my point to make this campaign, a positive, have a positive impact on my business, and make a point to my boss. Once I get past that, I can start pulling in different things. We here at Conductor, we build a lot of custom reports, based on customers' requests at first, and then we build on them at time. We have places where customers can Slack a bot, and it'll run a report in the cloud for them and send it back to them. And we've built that in, and that's cool, and that's a lot of fun. But that was an iterative process to get there. But that's the kind of thing I think that we're seeing now. To Marcel's point, it's like there's so many things we can do now. There's so many different. Do a lot of cool stuff, but the more automated you can make it, so that you don't have to think, oh, I got to go out and get this manual, and then I got to pull from here, I got to compile it all in Excel. No one wants to do that. So the more I would spend some time thinking about automation as well for reporting, just to make sure you're getting the data that makes the biggest impact for you.
I think guys, whatever the hell you're doing, you're impressing me. Because we've got something that have been very course pointed and popped into us from the live stream. I want Marcella to do my SEO exclamation mark quote. I really would like to pick Tom's brains quote. Really interesting point about reporting. I want a bot for that quote. So all is going well in the world, guys, but you're winning hearts and minds at the moment. Maybe it'll come unstuck now, though, in the last 5 minutes, because I've got an interesting question for you. For all of you. And we'll take it in turn. We'll start with Tom, then we'll turn to Patrick, then we'll turn to Marcella. But if I were to give you a brand new website, let's call it domain.com, because I'm very creative like that, and I give you $30,000 US, how would you invest the money for the highest return on investment? Tom, kick us off.
Yeah, I think as mentioned, the same components, right? So there has to be links, there has to be content that's optimized for keyword research. So, a portion of that budget will be time or a little bit of money for keyword research, and really collecting those keywords, clustering them together, so then we can plan out content that makes sense with user intent and what the competitiveness is, what the search volume is, that stuff. So that's step one. Step two is building out the content for that site, because, day one is domain.com, there's nothing there. So we have to have at least 5, 10, 20 pages and helpful, evergreen, useful content. And then the majority of the budget, over 50%, I would put towards authoritative link building. And that really comes from many different places, offsite. It could be PR, it could be building relationships, it could be getting yourself interviewed on a podcast, it could be doing outreach like Marcella had mentioned, and just going at that really strong. But I might even put 60, 70% into those links, because that is the most impactful ranking factor. And then there's the technical stuff. But if it's a new site, as long as like the bare bones basics of the site, there's no major issues. I don't see it as like we need to spend a ton of time there. And then user experience, and how quickly a page loads, and that the design is like nice and good to be on.
Great, thanks, Tom. Patrick, you're up.
Yeah, so interesting. So I definitely share some views with Tom there. Definitely, you would want to start building up the authority of the site. You have to invest, a good portion of that budget, probably 45% of it, into, building up the domain, link authority. I would also, then start to, content creation, as I'm sure everyone can guess. I'm a big believer in good content creation. I would go out, find a freelancer or a couple of freelancers, hire them, and then start churning out content on a monthly basis, create a content calendar, and then figure out, and then work on outreach, and then if, from the outreach standpoint, again, PR type stuff, social media type stuff, get that content out there, get those assets out there, make your company look great, make that website look awesome. And if you have anything left over, I would invest in into some A/B testing and do some CTA, testing to see, different messaging to get, to kind of increase, that, the CRO of the site.
Marcella, ice the kick.
Well, I agree with all that. And the only thing I would add to it is possibly taking a small percentage of the budget towards influencers. So I would maybe pick 1 or 2 influencers who could help really kickstart the campaign. Because one of the latest studies that we did at Semrush, one of the biggest ranking factors that we found was direct traffic. And of course, user engagement signals. So what I would recommend is obviously content, link building, outreach, and technical. And then I would take, I don't know, maybe 10% and give it to 1 or 2 influencers who could then kick off with direct traffic, links, some really good user signals. They're going to send direct traffic right over. Those people could be cookied, and then we're going to come there. We'll get those people back through with a lead magnet, for example. So I think if we add in an influencer piece to what we laid out, I think it would help to make something happen sooner. That could be part of that sort of like kickstart, is pulling in an influencer.
Great, thanks everybody. And that is how we make a kick. On the $30,000 spend, I mean, I appreciate it's not very much money. What can you do? Everybody, we're kind of coming to a close, and I know we could talk for another 4.5 years, I would say, about all these different things. But Tom, if I wanted to see more of you, where would I see you next? Or is there a podcast that I could listen to?
Yeah, you could, just like any one of us, I think you can Google any of our names and you'll find us in any various number of places on websites and social media and podcasts, perhaps. Yeah.
Cool. And Patrick, you're much the same. I believe you have an excellent webinar that I listened to.
Yes. I do a monthly webinar called 30/30. We catch up, what happened in search the last 30 days in 30 minutes, answer questions live, much like this. And we also just launched a podcast called Search on Tap, where we drink beer, we talk about search, we bring guests in. We've had some great guests so far. Marcel, if you want to come on, I'd love to have you. Tom's already been a guest. I feel like you got to join the club. So anyone who wants to listen to that, definitely check it out.
Cool. Search and beer. And Marcella, I know we'll see you at every conference that is not nailed down in every country, but where are you?
Essentially, I will be at SMX Advanced next month and at many conferences all over the world. And I'm spending quite a bit of time on Twitter lately. So there too.
Marcella is on Twitter, everybody. You heard it here first. All right.
A recent convert.
Indeed. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody, of course, for joining us for this Semrush webinar around generating ROI through the fine art of SEO. We thought at times it was a snowball, a mountain, the greatest weapon in your arsenal. Just a brilliant Monday morning for Marcella.
Just another day.
Indeed. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been our great pleasure, of course, to talk with you, indeed, to answer some of your questions. Hopefully, a great many of those questions, and these talk about some really interesting stuff. So big thanks, of course, to Tom, to Patrick, to Marcella for sharing their expertise with us over the course of the past hour. And indeed, if you want to torture Ian, who Marcella referred to, you can see him on the 7th of June, of course, on the Semrush webinar pages as well. But with that, we bid you a fond farewell. Enjoy the rest of your day, depending on where you're at in the world. Bye from us all, and thank you so much for joining. Take care.